Do you regard black magic as being purely fictitious, or is there some truth in it?
Some truth. 100% truth. There is nothing fictitious about black magic.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us for another video today. Today we are going to explore the practice of summoning spirits or entities. We are doing today's effort with the help of Chaz from chazofthedead.com. This topic is something that I personally have knowledge of, but I lack the real-world application, and to be quite frank, I am not really interested in actually attempting to summon anything. This is where the expertise of Chaz really begins to shine. He has spent countless hours studying and practicing rituals of the occult, so what better way to actually get into the heart of the matter than putting his efforts on video for you all to experience. I do not recommend that anyone attempt to do anything that Chaz does in this video. It could be potentially dangerous, and without the wealth of knowledge that he possesses, it could create an extremely unsafe situation for you and your family. With all of that out of the way, I hope that you enjoy and learn from today's video. Let's get into it.
It is a fact. It is a fact which has existed for several thousand years. I mean, when we talk about black magic, we are talking about Satanism, necromancy, alchemy, witchcraft, the worship of Satan, the worship of dark forces, whether it's voodoo, juju, whether it's something practiced in the Western world or the Eastern world, whether it's easily defined or not easily defined, the order of the left-hand path, the following of this, the following of that. It is basically the worship of the force of evil as embodied by Satan, Lucifer, the princes of darkness and their legions and so on. In a very simple sense, of course, it goes much more deeply than that. It is a fact. It is a desperately dangerous fact. It does exist. It exists around us today. Satanic ceremonies will be happening in Britain tonight. Very definitely. Ask any priest, ask any member of the forces of law and order, and they will tell you that Satanism as such, it's there, and it has been for thousands of years. Man has worshipped the devil longer than he has worshipped perhaps an established religious figure.
I donned my silver and gray robe. The fresh piece of chalk snapped in two when I first pressed it to the wooden floor. I picked up the smaller, thicker half of the broken chalk and continued the circle. The chalk didn't stick to the floor as it does to the boards in school, so I had to scratch my lines to leave the impression. After a while, a slightly crooked circle appeared. Within it, an upside-down pentagram formed. Along the inside edge of the circle, and in between the spokes of the star, and placed some common symbols and protection sigils of my own design. Then I referred to my digital copy of Aleister Crowley's illustrated grimoire. I found the entity that correlated with the dates of my experiment. A spirit named Seer, a prince of the underworld in charge of 26 legions of spirits, according to the book. He is said to be of good nature and can help the summoner with many things, including finding lost treasure, a surprisingly common ability for spirits. I lit a handful of incense to clear the space before I traced his sigil into the center. The bundle of incense continued to plume smoke as I repeated the sigil on a piece of rolling paper. I placed a small ashtray in the center on top of the seer's sigil. I poured a small offering of rum and tobacco into the tray, as in the hoodoo tradition as part of my chaotic magic practice. I then burned the copied sigil into the ashtray and started the invocation. For me, the invocation is more of a meditative and artistic practice, a way to practice drawing common occult symbols like pentagrams, as well as practicing my sigil writing. Really, a form of guided meditation or self-hypnosis. The low lighting and the practicing of artwork are all meant to help a person get into more of a meditative state. I have never successfully spoken to any entities during this practice, and despite many attempts to use demons to find treasure, I have yet to find a treasure chest. This experience was essentially the same as the previous attempts. I meditated over the magic circle for a little less than an hour. I asked a few questions in a small seance attempt, but like usual, there were no disincarnate voices or furniture stacking itself. Not a single thing that could be described as paranormal. After I wrapped up my meditation, I turned the lights back on and put out the incense. I left the circle because I enjoy having the art on my floor, and it's fun to spook people at parties. Perhaps it was too spooky for some, though. 2 days later, I had just offhandedly mentioned to my roommate about my invocation ceremony. He was a little taken aback, and I even showed him the symbols still on the floor. However, I was on the go, so the conversation quickly ended. Later that night, though, we sat down for a drink, and he explained his experience of the previous night. My roommate described that the same night I was performing my ritual, he had arrived home after some drinks. He went to his room, which is adjacent to mine, and was putting his laptop away on his desk. He claims as he did this, he felt a force strongly push the back of his head. His face hit the surface of the desk with enough force to cause a nosebleed. Naturally, he was very frightened, and even more so when he saw my magic circle on the floor. Now, of course, as a researcher, I was skeptical. He said he had been drinking, and of course, I at first attributed this incident to that fact. It's Mexico City. Everyone drinks, and usually a pretty fun amount. Now, this is obviously the easiest explanation, and I imagine most of my readers and listeners will accept this as the actual conclusion to the event. My roommate, however, insists that in his entire life he has never had that happen to him, sober or not. He was so bothered by the experience that he insisted I erase the circle and made me promise that I wouldn't conjure in the apartment again. He was extremely adamant about this despite my best attempt to convince him otherwise. I even tried to persuade him that we could attempt to capture the phenomenon and cash in on one of the many cash prizes for evidence of the paranormal. But he was uninterested in the cash and fully believed there was a connection between my strange meditation and his experience. The only other strange thing I noticed was a smoky smell in the hallway outside our rooms. The smell seemed to linger for a couple of weeks. I normally would dismiss this as below our apartment is 2 restaurants. But combined with my roommate's story, I thought it was worth noting it for its unusual scent and duration. After some negotiation, I got permission to use our storage room on the roof to continue my experiments. This was a good compromise, as the roof is very creepy at night and will make a perfect atmosphere for summoning. With any luck, in the next attempt, I will get to experience something paranormal. But I'll be sure to check with my roommate after I do so to see if he perhaps has any experience that might correlate.
I think it's a form of escapism. It's the fact that in this day and age we do live in a somewhat disagreeable world in many respects that I don't have to even talk about. Everybody knows this is a fact. And people are constantly seeking for a way out, whether it's to gratify their own desires or whether it's to find a way out of their own loneliness, or whether it is looking for power or physical indulgence or whatever you like to call it. I think it's always this question of people looking for a road out, an exit, an escape, some form of safety valve which will help them to blow off steam. They don't realize how dangerous it is to get involved in this respect, because inevitably they start at a lower level and then they get absolutely under the control of the bosses, because the bosses exist. They have the same ranks in the Church of Evil as they have in the good church. They do. They have ranks in the hierarchy of the priesthood, just as you have bishops and deacons and archbishops and cardinals and so on. You have various ranks and grades.
We will be bringing you any follow-up content that Chaz might do regarding his experimentation into occult practices. Please tread with caution if you intend on taking any of your personal research further. Thank you so much for joining us today as we explored a dark ritual of the occult. We really appreciate all of your support that you continue to give us. Please like, subscribe, share, and post a comment. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you never miss any of our content. Until the next one,